So, good evening, friends. And I'm very glad that the GrowthNet is back in India with such a distinguished group of people. So I always wonder that GrowthNet has the ability to net the best of the minds. So you can get all these people to think about what needs to be done to revive the global economy and also to hasten the process of development globally. I have been talking about this at a number of places in the different parts of the world, about how could one single intervention which could really trigger the huge growth potential that the world economy is still trying to explore where it is. And that one is clearly infrastructure. And the reason for that is when you invest into infrastructure anywhere in the world, the nature of infrastructure is such that though the infrastructure investment, where it goes, that geography obviously will benefit the most. Suppose if infrastructure is being made in India, obviously India will be the single largest beneficiary. But that's a very limited way of looking at it. If you really look at it, infrastructure investment in India would bring about a huge pull factor which will actually help the many different sectors, different geographies to benefit from it. Just one example which I have been giving many times is that infrastructure in India would need financing. So that may come from London or from Frankfurt or from Tokyo or from Singapore or from New York. And people may think that financing is help to the country where the investment is made. Yes, it is, but also help to those who finance, because that means that the money which is waiting to be invested finds a destination. So that's one advantage. Secondly, if you want to create an asset, and infrastructure investments will be huge, such nature of investment would also call for insurance. So the insurance will come from different parts of the world. Maybe not necessarily the insurance, but definitely reinsurance. So that again will bring in the different type of a demand for it. And when Lord Stern is here, he can tell you how exactly it will happen. And so this is something. Then, as we have seen, many of the things which get assembled in a particular country for creating infrastructure are sourced from different parts of the world. And that again would create demand for many goods, not just services, from different parts of the world. So actually, the value chain, the supply chain, which will make that infrastructure investment possible in a particular geography, will have a huge potential to create demand of a very different magnitude, different nature in different parts of the world. So infrastructure is one intervention which could actually make world growth again put on a fast track. I'm very happy that my good friend Tom is here, who is also one of the key players into many of these initiatives that we are doing in India. Japan has decided to invest $25 billion into infrastructure of India in the next few years. And therefore we thought that Japan wants to do something, so let us give them one big ticket opportunity. So $16 billion of that will come into railways alone, in one project. The balance $9 billion also mostly will come into the railways, but $16 billion will also come into one single project. And that's something which will, the high-speed railway between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. So infrastructure has this potential. Now the question that you asked me, and that's a very valid one, is how do you address these gaps that exist between this? So first gap, obviously the policy gap. If you don't have right policy, it will not work. But sometimes, and again that you highlighted, is that the governments normally feel that we make good policies, but what is the use of that policy if there are no takers for the policy? So the policy is as good as it is implemented. So therefore, actually getting a proper investor interest into policy making is very key to the success of the policy itself. And in India, I think over a long period of time, having realized that the infrastructure creation will not happen only from public investment, we are really being now addressing the issue of how to get more and more private investment into creating public infrastructure. And that's not a very easy thing to do. Nowhere in the world we are creating public infrastructure with private money of the magnitude that now world would need to do it. And therefore, the new model that has evolved is not just public investment, not only standalone private investment, but marry both and try to create a vehicle called private-public partnership. And on that, over a long period of time, we have learned a lot, unlearned also in the process, and now I can say confidently that we have a framework to make private-public partnership possible. Very recently, we have come out with a PPP2. The PPP1 was something which happened over time. We created model concession agreements. We found out takers, some succeeded, some have created some issues. But now, recently, we had appointed a committee called, under the chairmanship of one of the very eminent economists of India, Dr. Vijay Kelkar. And now we have a new framework which can actually take care of some of these wrong issues that we need to deal with, as well as some of the positive signs that emerge from the practices so far. And now, therefore, I can say confidently that we have a framework ready. Now, the challenge of infrastructure is that we need long-term source of financing for infrastructure. Infrastructure, by definition, will not pay for itself in 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. If it is so, then it's not infrastructure. This is normal manufacturing or some normal project. And the life of infrastructure itself is probably a few decades. So how do you ensure that we have a matching financing pattern which will be living and outliving, or not necessarily outliving, the infrastructure will outlive it, but actually taking into account the life of infrastructure project itself, and therefore how do you finance it on a long-term basis? So that means we need long-term line of financing source. We cannot have a normal household savings financing infrastructure, because the banks typically act as intermediaries, source the household funds, and try to lend to a borrower at a time which normally and should be necessarily be in line with the time he has to repay the loan. So therefore, time and demand liabilities of the banks and the lending has to match each other. But if it doesn't match, then we call it asset liability mismatch. And that could land any banking institution anywhere in the world in trouble. So what we need is long-term source of financing. Now the gap that you talked about, this is one gap, that we are trying to finance infrastructure from short-term resources for long-term needs. And that's not going to happen. So therefore what we need is long-term source of financing which can be invested into long-term infrastructure needs. And to do that, the best available institution, best available vehicle is a pension fund itself. And a pension fund can actually be the right source because that matches the profile of the infrastructure as well as the profile of the pension fund itself, where the pension fund don't have to repay their liabilities in 5 years or 6 years, but they have to do it over 30, 35 years. So that really makes sense. So I think this is a great opportunity, and this is another gap, if at all you talked about, and that can be breached. When I was the Prime Minister Shaper for G20, have been actually telling my colleagues in the G20 that why not we organize a round table around this issue as to how do you bring the investors on one side, the possibility of investing into projects on the other, and identify what are the gaps across the table, rather than doing it on a theoretical basis. And that again, something now the G20 wants to take it forward, so that would address this issue. But I can see a bilateral dialogue as well as useful, like what we did in Japan. And I will just tell you, if I don't want to embarrass my good friend Tom, that what Japan has done for India, they have given us 50 years loan for 0.1% interest, which can be first 15 years, nothing to be repaid. So only Tom can do it for us, nobody else can do. Because this is something which I was asking only the other day. I was in the midst of all the top bankers, all the top global investors only a few days ago. And I said, if anybody in this hall, which together account for maybe several $1 trillion of investment under their management, anybody can improve it, we'll give a few $1 million prize. But nobody raised a finger, obviously, because this is something nobody can do. So the Japan, what they have done, it's a bilateral one. But again, to bridge these gaps, we can actually think about a multilateral sources. And now we are getting new multilateral institutions getting created. Asia Infrastructure Bank is one such multilateral institution which is getting created. The BRICS Bank, which again will be doing the first lending soon, they wanted to also do the first lending to railways. But the railways right now, our problem is not to get money. We have right now the good amount of money available. But how do you actually therefore bring all these different stakeholders together to create a cohesive policy framework in which the policy alone on a standalone basis has no meaning unless it is implemented on the ground. Therefore, investors also come forward. And in the process of making investment, if there are any issues, how to address them, we need also one of the gap analysis is how to create a platform where these issues can get addressed. Now, as far as another point that you mentioned, having bankable projects ready. I think that's something very interesting. The railways, we have created a group, a large pool of bankable projects. So we have a pipeline where these projects can be used for investment. And therefore, such things, many of the ministries also done in India. So we could look at bringing together investors, all the other stakeholders, because investors are not the only stakeholders in financing infrastructure. They may be actually putting the money. But as I told you, the ecosystem that is required to be built around cross-border deals of infrastructure investment, that cross-border deals, we need a lot of people to be brought in. So I'm very happy that GrowthNet has been addressing the issue. I think you could be also the right forum because you have the right connection, bringing so many people together. So maybe this is a good beginning to think about addressing the issue. But I'm very excited by the fact that infrastructure is going to be the next growth engine of pulling the present level of growth of the world to a higher level. And only country which has the highest amount of infrastructure need than any other country is India. Because India still needs large infrastructure. Every year we need something like $200 to $250 billion of investment, and that will keep rising as the economy grows. So therefore, even if you take a 10% growth rate, India would need that much. But I'm sure as we go along and our total GDP rises, we'll need even higher. So this is one country which is going to be a preferred destination for investment in infrastructure. India has already become the largest destination for FDI. And in fact, this year, as the trend shows, that we'll probably be even bettering our record of the previous year. So we look forward to working very closely to find out how these gaps can be addressed, policy to reality. Thank you.